did everything they told you. You wrote it down. You said the words out loud to the ceiling. You held the picture in your mind until your head ached with the effort of holding it. You felt, for a moment, that it was close. That this time, the thing would finally turn. And then you woke up, and the same face was in the mirror. The same weight sat in your chest before your eyes were fully open. The same number in the account. The same silence where the message should have been. The same body, the same street, the same life, wearing you like it always has. So you told yourself you did it wrong. You went looking for a better method, a cleaner technique, the right affirmation, the right frequency to tune to, the right teacher with the calm voice who finally had the missing piece. You have tried gratitude, and you have tried discipline. You have tried the versions with the science and the versions with the angels. You have gone quiet and trusting. And when that failed, you have gone hard and forceful. And when that failed, you went quiet again. You have lain awake doing the math on a life that will not add up, no matter how you arrange the numbers. And in the smallest hour of the night, the one you never say out loud, you have wondered if the problem is not the method at all. If the problem is you. If some people are simply built for the good life, and you were built for the waiting room, hold on to that thought. You were closer to the truth in that dark hour than any teacher ever brought you. But you had it upside down. You have been searching for the missing piece for a long time now. And I want to tell you something, gently, because you have been lied to by people who smiled while they did it. There is no missing piece. The technique was never broken. The method works. It has always worked. It worked for the people you envy, and it is working right now, in this exact moment, on you. That is the horror of it. It is working perfectly. It is giving you, with terrible precision, exactly what you keep telling it you are. The problem was never the wish. The problem is the one doing the wishing. Somewhere beneath the surface of your mind, there is a flaw. Not a flaw in you. A flaw in perception itself, in the machinery every human being is issued at birth. It has been documented. It has a clinical name, filed away in journals no one reads, so that you would learn it, nod, and forget it. The sleeping world walks around inside this flaw and calls it reality. You are about to be shown the machine, not the light version, not the comfortable one. I am going to take you down through 7 chambers, and in each one a piece of the lock will turn. And by the last door, you will understand why every attempt you have made has failed, and you will understand the single thing that would change everything. You have been getting exactly what you are, never what you want. Breathe. Lock the door behind you. We begin the descent. Chapter 1. The illusion with a name. Let me show you something you can prove tonight, without me, without faith in your own life. Think of a thing. A yellow car. A particular word. A make of watch. Something specific, something you rarely notice. Fix it in your mind. And then walk out into your week. By tomorrow, it will be everywhere. The yellow car will be at every light. The word will be in the article, in the conversation you overhear, in the caption you did not choose to read. It will feel like the world has arranged itself around your attention. It will feel like a sign, like the universe leaning in to whisper that you are on the right path. It is not a sign, it is a flaw, and it has a name. In 2005, a linguist at Stanford named Arnold Zwicky gave this thing its name. The frequency illusion. The strange trick where a phenomenon you have only just noticed suddenly seems to be occurring everywhere, all at once, as if it multiplied the moment you turned toward it. The older, stranger name for it came out of nowhere. 1994. A reader wrote into a Minnesota newspaper describing how he had heard the name of an obscure German group one day, and then encountered it again within hours, and could not shake the feeling that something eerie was happening. The name of that group was Baader Meinhof, and so a cognitive glitch that runs in every human skull got named after a gang of militants, because a man could not believe it was only in his head. It was only in his head. It is only in yours. The world did not multiply the thing. Your attention did. Here is what actually happens inside the machine. Two processes, working together, quietly, without your permission. The first is selective attention. Your mind, flooded every second with more information than it could ever hold, chooses. It filters. It decides in advance what is worth seeing, and it discards the rest before you are ever aware there was anything to discard. The moment you named the yellow car, you handed the filter a new instruction: show me this, and it obeyed. The second is confirmation bias. Once you believe a thing is true, your mind stops searching for what is real and starts hunting for what agrees with you. It gathers proof. It ignores the counter-evidence the way you ignore the hum of the refrigerator. Not because the counter-evidence is not there, because you were never looking for it. Selective attention decides what you see. Confirmation bias decides what it means. Between the two of them, they build you a private world, custom-fitted, and then they tell you it is the only world there is. Now, sit with that. Because I did not bring you down here to talk about yellow cars. You have named a thing about yourself. You named it a long time ago. So long ago you no longer remember naming it. You decided what kind of person you are. You decided whether you are the kind of person things work out for. You decided whether love arrives for someone like you, whether money stays, whether the door opens or stays shut. You made these decisions when you were small and frightened, and you have been confirming them ever since. And your mind, faithful, obedient, tireless, has spent every day of your life since then running the frequency illusion on your own existence. Showing you the evidence, gathering the proof, every rejection filed, every closed door remembered, every time it did not work, underlined and dated and kept. While the openings, the small yeses, the quiet grace, slid past unseen like the counter-evidence it was trained to discard. You think you are observing your life? You are not. You are curating it. You are walking through a vast room and seeing only the things that match the sentence you spoke over yourself as a child. Watch how total the loyalty is. A man decides, somewhere back in the wreckage of his childhood, that he is not the kind of person who gets chosen. He does not decide it in words. He decides it in the body, in the way a boy learns to stop reaching for things so he will not have to feel them pulled away. And from that day, the machine goes to work for him. Every girl who looks away becomes a data point. Every friendship that cools becomes a confirmation. Every room he enters, he scans, not for the people who might warm to him, but for the one face that proves the old verdict. And when he finds it, and he always finds it, something in him relaxes. See? I was right. I am not the kind who gets chosen. He is not a pessimist. He is an accountant, keeping a perfect ledger, and the ledger has only one column. The warmth that came his way, the doors that opened, the people who did in fact choose him. Those entries are simply never recorded. They do not fit the books. His mind discards them before they reach him, the way it discarded the ignored ear in the laboratory, the way you discarded the second voice you were told to ignore. And this is the thing no one will tell you, because it takes away the comfort of blaming the world. His life is not lying to him. The rejections are real. They happened. He is not imagining the closed doors. He is simply, faithfully, refusing to count anything else, and then standing in the ruins of a one-sided ledger and calling it proof of how the world is. You do the same thing. Not with his wound, with yours. You chose a sentence about yourself before you were old enough to know you were choosing, and you have spent every year since building the case for the prosecution. You are not a neutral witness to your own life. You are the prosecutor, the judge, and the only juror who was ever allowed in the room. You are not the witness to your life. You are the prosecutor, still building the case against yourself. And here is the cruelty folded inside the mercy of it. The same machine that convicts you would acquit you just as faithfully if you ever changed the verdict it was defending. It has no loyalty to your suffering. It has loyalty only to consistency. It will gather evidence for whoever you decide you are with the exact same devotion, in the exact same silence. You have simply never given it a new instruction and held it long enough for the ledger to turn. But that is the last chamber, not this one. For now, stay with the horror, because you have not felt the bottom of it yet. This is the first turn of the lock. The thing you call reality is not what is there. It is what you are looking for. And you have been looking, with devastating loyalty, for reasons to stay exactly who you are. You are not seeing your life. You are collecting evidence for the verdict you already reached. The sleeping ones never learn this. They spend their whole lives inside the filter, mistaking it for the window. But you are still reading, so follow me down. Because if your mind only shows you a fraction of what is there, the question that should be keeping you awake is simple, and it is terrible. What is in the room that you cannot see? Chapter 2. The thing in the room you cannot see. In 1953, a scientist named Colin Cherry sat people down and played two voices into their ears at once. One in the left, one in the right. He asked them to follow only one, to repeat it back, word for word, while the other voice spoke underneath. They could do it. That part did not surprise him. What surprised him was the other voice, the one they were told to ignore. Afterward, they could remember almost nothing of it. Not the words, not the meaning. In some tests, not even what language it had been spoken in. It had poured directly into their ear, for minutes, and they had heard it and retained nothing. He called it the cocktail party problem. You are in a crowded room, 100 conversations at once, and somehow you follow one voice across it. You filter the rest into background. But here's the part that should trouble you. The rest does not stop existing. It is still there, every word of it. You have simply been made blind to it. By design. By the very thing that lets you focus at all. Decades later, they made it visible. You may know this one. They gave people a video of a group passing a basketball and asked them to count the passes. Simple. Watch closely. Count. Halfway through, a person in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the frame. Stops. Faces the camera. Beats their chest. And walks off. Roughly half the people never saw it. Not a fleeting glimpse. Nothing. A gorilla walked into the center of their vision, stood there in plain view, and their minds erased it. Because they were busy counting, because it was not what they were looking for. They called it inattentional blindness. Say those words slowly. Blindness, not distraction, not oversight. Blindness. Their eyes worked perfectly. The light hit the retina. The image formed. And the mind, deciding it was irrelevant, refused to let it through. A gorilla can stand in the center of your life. If it is not what you are looking for, you will not see it. Now let me tell you about the lie they sell in soft lighting. The comfortable teachers will tell you there is a gate in your brain that hunts for what you want. They call it the reticular activating system, and they will tell you it is a kind of personal servant, scanning the world, dragging opportunities toward you, pulling your desires out of the crowd and delivering them to your feet. Focus on the money, they say, and the gate will fetch it. That is a fairy tale dressed in a lab coat. The gate is real. Its name is real. Deep in the oldest part of your brain, the reticular activating system does exist, and it does govern something. It governs whether you are awake at all. It governs arousal, alertness, the raising and lowering of the whole dimmer switch of consciousness. Damage it, and a person does not lose their manifestations. They lose the ability to wake up. It does not fetch, it filters. It does not go out into the world and gather your dreams. It sits at the door and decides how much of the flood gets through to you at all. And what it lets through is decided by one thing. What you have told it matters. Do you understand what this means for you? Every teacher who told you to want harder was pointing you at the wrong machine. You cannot pull toward you what your own filter has been instructed to discard. And your filter has been instructed for years by an identity that does not believe the good thing is for you. So walk through your life now with new eyes and understand the true shape of your prison. The opportunity was in the room. The person who would have said yes was in the room. The idea, the open door, the second glance, the small mercy, all of it in the room. Standing in the center of the frame, beating its chest, and you were counting passes. You did not miss your life because it never came. You missed it because it did not match the picture you were looking for. Your identity handed the filter a list of what it was allowed to notice, and everything not on that list walked past you, invisible, close enough to touch. What you needed was never absent. It was unlisted. Let me make it flesh, because the gorilla is easy to nod at and hard to feel. A woman sits in a cafe, certain that she is alone in the way that has followed her for years, certain that connection is a thing that happens to other people. At the table beside her, a man glances over. Once, then again. He is deciding whether to speak. This is the opening. This is the door, standing in the center of the frame, beating its chest. She does not see it. Not because she's looking away, because her filter was handed an instruction long ago that says nobody is looking. And so the glance is edited out before it ever reaches her, discarded as noise, the way the ignored ear was discarded. She feels the old certainty settle over her like a familiar coat. See? Alone again. And she gathers her things and leaves, and adds the empty afternoon to the ledger, and the man watches the door close and decides he read it wrong. Two people, one opening, and a filter that made it invisible to the only person who needed to see it. She will go home and tell herself the truth as she experienced it. Nothing happened, and she will be lying. And she will not know she is lying, because the thing that happened was deleted at the door before she could witness it. This is happening to you. Right now, this week, in ways you will never be able to prove, because the evidence is destroyed on arrival. The introduction you did not register. The idea that brushed past your attention and found no place to land. The person who softened toward you while you were busy confirming that no one ever does. Your identity issued the list of what you are permitted to notice, and your whole life, the part that could have saved you, has been walking past you just outside the edge of that list. The sleeping teachers will tell you to raise your awareness. As if attention were a volume knob you simply forgot to turn up It is not a volume knob. It is a shape. And the shape was cut by the self you have been. You cannot widen the aperture by wanting to. You can only become someone whose aperture is cut differently, and then watch, astonished, as a world you swore was empty turns out to have been crowded the entire time with everything you were told did not exist. The room was never empty. You were only ever allowed to see the part that agreed with you. This is the second turn of the lock. You are not perceiving too little because the world is empty. You are perceiving too little because you are full. Full of an old self that already decided what is possible and edits the world to keep the decision safe. But there is a deeper floor beneath this one. Because so far I have told you that your mind hides things from you. In the next chamber, I am going to tell you something worse. Your mind does not only hide reality, it builds it. Chapter 3. The Controlled Hallucination. Everything you have ever seen, you have never actually seen. Sit with that for a moment before you argue with it. The colors of this room, the face of the person you love, the sky. You believe these things arrive in you from the outside, pure, delivered by your eyes like a camera records a scene. They do not. That is not how you work. That has never been how any human being worked. Light hits the back of your eye and becomes nothing but electrical noise. Chaotic, meaningless signal racing up the nerve into the dark of your skull, where no light has ever reached. Your brain sits in absolute blackness, in total silence, and out of that storm of raw signal it does something almost unbelievable. It guesses. More than a century ago, a German named Hermann von Helmholtz understood this first. He called it unconscious inference. Perception, he realized, is not reception. It is inference. Your brain takes the noise and makes its best guess about what out there could have caused it. And then it shows you the guess. You do not see the world. You see the guess your brain constructed about the world, painted over your senses so fast and so seamlessly that you never once suspected it was a painting. The modern scientists have a colder, more beautiful phrase for it. One of them, the neuroscientist Anil Seth, calls what you are experiencing a controlled hallucination. Perception is a controlled hallucination. A hallucination because it is generated from the inside, manufactured by your brain, projected outward. Controlled because it is tied to the signal coming in, reined in by the data, kept honest enough that you do not walk into walls. You are hallucinating your entire life. The only thing separating you from madness is that your hallucination is on a leash. And here is the part that turns this from a curiosity into the deepest law of the whole descent. The guess is built from the past. Your brain cannot guess from nothing. To turn noise into a world, it needs priors, expectations. A model of what is usually true, assembled from everything you have ever experienced, every belief you hold, every conclusion you ever reached about how life goes. It leans on the past to interpret the present. It must. It has nothing else to work with. Two people stand on the same street. One brain, carrying a model that says the world is generous, hallucinates a street full of doors. The other brain, carrying a model that says the world is a closing fist, hallucinates the same street as a place of threat and refusal. Same photons, same light. Two different worlds, and each person is certain, absolutely certain, that they are simply seeing what is there. Now hear the brand of this house, and know that it was never poetry. It was mechanics. The physical world you walk through is a delayed echo. It is the past, rendered. It is your old model of reality, projected onto the present moment and mistaken for the present moment. When you look at your life and see lack, you are not seeing today. You are seeing yesterday's belief painted over today's light so convincingly that you would swear on your life it is real. Your reality is a delayed echo. You are hearing yesterday and calling it now. This is why the wish never worked. Follow the machine to its conclusion. You sat down to manifest, to imagine a new life. But you imagined it with a brain whose model still said, you are someone who lacks. You pictured the money, but the picture was rendered by a self that does not believe in it. So the render came out thin, false, unconvincing even to you. You said the words, but underneath the words, as the model kept humming its old certainty. And the model is what builds your world. Not the words, the model. You cannot outpicture your own model. You cannot affirm your way past the thing doing the affirming. As long as the self generating the hallucination is the old self, the hallucination will be the old life. Every single time. With perfect fidelity. Go deeper into how the guess is made. Because this is the floor beneath the floor. Your brain does not weigh every possibility fresh in each moment. It cannot. It would drown. So it leans on the prior, the expectation, and it lets the expectation do most of the work. And it only bothers to update the picture when the incoming signal screams loudly enough to overrule what it already believed. Most of the time, the signal does not scream. Most of the time, your brain simply serves you the expectation and calls it perception. You have felt this. You have read a message from someone and heard it in a cold voice, and been certain they were angry, and later learned they were only tired or rushing or kind. And the coldness was never in the words at all. It was in you. Your model supplied the tone. Your brain took the flat text and painted it with the emotion it already expected and handed you the painting and swore it was the message. Now scale that up to an entire life. A person who carries a model that says the world is against them does not occasionally misread a message. They misread everything. The neutral becomes hostile. The generous becomes suspicious. The open door becomes a trap they are too clever to walk into. Their brain is not lying out of malice. It is doing exactly what every brain does, filling the gaps with the prior. Except their prior is a wound, and so the world it builds is a wound, rendered in perfect detail, indistinguishable from truth. And they will defend that world to anyone who questions it, because to them it is not an interpretation. It is simply what is there. This is the deepest trap in the whole descent. Not that we see reality wrongly, that the wrongness is invisible, seamless, indistinguishable from sight itself. You cannot feel yourself hallucinating. That is what controlled means. The leash is so short and so smooth that you mistake the whole apparatus for a window. You will defend your hallucination to the death, because from the inside, it looks exactly like the truth. So when I tell you the delayed echo is real, understand I am not speaking in metaphor. The lack you see is not a report on the present. It is your past, rendered by a brain that leans on the past to build the present, projected onto today's raw signal so convincingly that arguing with it feels like arguing with your own eyes. And in a sense, it is your own eyes. That is the whole problem. Your eyes were never neutral. They were always, from the very first day, painting the world in the colors of the self that was looking. The frightening freedom hidden in this is the whole reason you are here. If reality is a construction, it can be reconstructed. If perception is a guess shaped by belief, then belief is the lever under the entire world. But the lever is not the wish. The lever is the one holding it. Which brings us to the cruelest chamber of all, because you may be thinking, then I will simply change my model. I will decide to be new. Try it, and meet the thing that has been dragging you back your whole life. Chapter 4. The Thermostat. You have felt it, even if you never had a word for it. The good thing arrives. The raise, the relationship, the run of days where life is finally kind. And something in you, quiet at first, begins to tighten. A discomfort you cannot explain, a sense that this is not quite yours, that you are wearing a coat that belongs to someone else, that any moment now they will realize the mistake and take it back. And then, somehow, you find a way to lose it. You pick the fight. You miss the deadline. You reach for the old comfort that ruins everything. You reach for the thing that pulls the good life apart with your own hands. And afterward, in the wreckage, beneath the shame, there's a feeling you would never admit to. Relief. Because you are home again. Back at the temperature you were set to. You do not sabotage the good life because you hate it. You sabotage it because you do not recognize yourself in it. In 1960, a surgeon named Maxwell Maltz noticed something in his patients that had nothing to do with surgery. He would change a face, fix the nose, remove the scar, the thing they had wept over for years. And a certain number of them would look in the mirror at the new face and still see the old one. The wound was gone from the flesh. It was not gone from the self. Nothing had changed on the inside, so nothing they saw on the outside was allowed to be real. He concluded that every person carries an inner image of who they are, and that this self-image behaves like a machine with a set point, like a thermostat. Set the room to a temperature, and the machine will fight to hold it there. Too cold, it heats. Too warm, it cools. It does not care what you say you want. It cares only about returning to the number it was set to. Your identity has a set point, a temperature of income you are comfortable being, a temperature of love you believe you deserve, a temperature of success that feels like you. And the moment your life rises above that set point, the machine does not celebrate. It corrects. It cools you back down to the self you know. It has been doing this for years, and you called it bad luck. It goes deeper than comfort. This is the part that will hurt. In the 1980s, a psychologist named William Swan uncovered something that should be impossible. He found that people do not simply want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel right about themselves. They will seek out the people, the situations, the feedback that confirm what they already believe they are. Even when the belief is a wound, even when the confirmation is pain. He called it self-verification, and he found that a person who believes they are unlovable will, given the choice between someone who adores them and someone who confirms their worthlessness, feel a pull toward the one who confirms the wound. Not because they enjoy suffering, because being right about who you are feels safer than being happy and lost. Coherence over joy. The known hell over the unknown heaven. You would rather be right about your unworthiness than be free and unsure of who you are. Do you see it now? Do you see why the love that was good for you felt boring, and the love that starved you felt like home? Your identity was verifying itself, selecting the evidence, choosing the confirmation, the frequency illusion, turned inward and aimed at your own heart. And when reality does hand you something that contradicts the self, when life insists you are more than you decided to be, you feel a specific and unbearable friction. A researcher named Leon Festinger named this too, long ago. Cognitive dissonance. The mind cannot hold two opposing truths without agony. It must resolve the tension. And it is far, far easier to reject the new evidence than to rebuild the entire self. So the promotion becomes a fluke. The compliment becomes a lie they told to be kind. The good day becomes the thing you are waiting to have taken from you. Your mind burns down the new reality to protect the old identity, and it does this in the dark, automatically, below the level where you could ever catch it and stop it. Let me take you inside one of these corrections, slowly, so you can feel the machine work. Someone loves you well, not the frantic love you are used to, the kind that keeps you guessing, the kind that feels like love because it feels like the old fear. This one is steady, present. It asks nothing of you but that you let yourself be held. And instead of peace, you feel a low alarm begin to sound. Somewhere beneath your ribs, an alarm you cannot explain and would be ashamed to name. Because steady love does not match the self. The self was built in a house where love was a thing you earned and lost and earned again. And this calm, unconditional thing does not compute. It contradicts the model, and a brain cannot sit in contradiction for long. So it begins quietly, to resolve the tension the only way it knows. It looks for the catch. It manufactures the doubt. It whispers that this is too good, that you are being fooled, that the other shoe is already in the air, above your head, about to fall. And so you begin to test it. You pick at the edges. You create the very instability the old self recognizes as home. You mistake the calm for boredom and the drama you are engineering for passion. And one day you succeed. You finally break this steady thing. And as it falls apart in your hands, there is that feeling again, the one you would never admit. You are home. The temperature is correct. The self is verified. And you will tell the story afterward as if it happened to you, as if the love simply failed, when the truth is that you could not tolerate being held by something that did not match the sentence you spoke over yourself as a child. This is not weakness. Hear me. This is not a flaw to add to the ledger against yourself. This is the most natural thing a nervous system does. It protects the known, even when the known is a cage, because the known has one overwhelming advantage over the unknown. You have survived it. Every day of your life is proof that you can survive being who you have been. You have no such proof about who you might become. And so the machine, which was built to keep you alive, chooses the familiar cage over the unfamiliar sky every time and calls it safety. The cage has one thing the sky does not: proof that you survived it. This is why you cannot simply decide to be new and expect it to hold. Deciding is the easy part. You have decided 100 times. The morning resolution, the fresh start, the new self you swore you would be by nightfall. And by evening the thermostat had cooled you back down, so quietly you did not even feel it happen. And you woke the next day the same person and blamed your discipline, when discipline was never the thing that failed. The set point was, you cannot outdecide a thermostat. You have to reset it. And you cannot reset it by force, because force is just the old self straining. And the old self is the very thing holding the temperature in place. This is the fourth turn of the lock, and it is the one that explains your whole life. You have not been failing to manifest. You have been succeeding at self-preservation. The machine was never broken. It was guarding the one thing it was built to guard. The self it was handed. The self you named in the dark, when you were small. Every technique you ever tried failed for the same reason. You brought a wish to a thermostat. And the thermostat did what thermostats do. There is only one way past a machine like this. You do not fight it. You do not force it. You reset the temperature. But before I show you how, you have to see the final cruelty of the prison. Because the identity does not only filter your world and drag you back, it reaches out, and it makes the world answer in its own voice. Chapter 5. The Prophecy That Speaks Itself. In 1948, a sociologist named Robert Merton put a name to the oldest engine of human ruin. He called it the self-fulfilling prophecy. His example was a bank. A rumor spreads that a bank is failing. It is not true. The bank is sound. But people believe the rumor, and believing it, they rush to withdraw their money all at once, and the sudden flood of withdrawals drains the bank, and the bank collapses. The prophecy was false when it was spoken. The speaking of it made it true. He was building on an older law, simpler and more merciless. If people define a situation as real, it becomes real in its consequences. It does not have to be true to begin with. Your belief in it will finish the job. A false belief, spoken with conviction, will go out and make itself true. Now bring it home to your own skin. You walk into the room already certain they will not choose you. And that certainty is not silent. It leaks. It changes your posture, the pitch of your voice, the length you hold their eyes, the thing you do not say, because you already know it is pointless. They feel it. They cannot name it. But they feel the person in front of them has already decided the answer is no. And so they give you the no. And you walk out and add it to the file. Proof. More proof. The prophecy confirmed. You did not predict the rejection. You transmitted it. You handed them the script and they read it back to you, and then you called it fate. They proved this in a way that should frighten every parent and every teacher alive. In 1968, 2 researchers walked into a school and told the teachers that certain children, chosen at random, were about to bloom. Special. Poised for a leap. It was a lie. The children were ordinary, selected by chance. But the teachers now believed. And over the year, the teachers looked at those children differently, waited a half-second longer for their answers, warmed to them, expected more. And the children, some of them, rose. Not because they were special, because they were seen as special, and the seeing shaped them. Now, I will not lie to you the way the gurus do. The effect was smaller than the legend became, and it did not turn ordinary minds into geniuses. The scientists who came after argued about the size of it for decades, and they were right too. But the direction was real, and it has been confirmed in the years since. Expectation bends outcome. What is believed about a person leaks into how they are treated, and how they are treated leaks into who they become. So turn the instrument on yourself and understand the full machine at last. Your identity believes a thing about your life. That belief filters what you see, so you gather only confirming evidence. That belief shapes how you carry yourself, so you transmit it to everyone you meet, and they answer in kind. That belief builds the very world your senses show you, the delayed echo, rendered from the old model. And every closed door, every cold face, every failure that your own certainty helped create, comes back to you as proof. And the proof deepens the belief, and the deeper belief filters harder, transmits stronger, renders colder, around and around. A sentence that writes itself. A prison that builds its own walls out of your own conviction, using your own hands, while you sleep. The invisible prison has no walls. You are the wall. You are the guard. You are the sentence, speaking itself. And the loop does not only run through strangers. It runs through the people closest to you, the ones who have known you for years, because they have learned your signal better than anyone. They know who you are. Or rather, They know who you have transmitted yourself to be for so long that it has hardened into a role, and the role has a script, and everyone at the table knows their lines. You walk in already braced for them to treat you as the one who never quite has it together. And the bracing shows in the flat greeting, the defensive shoulders, the self-deprecating story you tell that confirms it before they can even ask. And they respond to the person you are broadcasting. And you gather their response as proof. See? Even they see it. Even they know. You built that. Not alone. The past is real. The old wounds are real. But the present shape of it, the way the room arranges itself around your smallness every single time, that is a thing you are transmitting, and they are reflecting. A duet you have been performing together for so long that all of you mistake it for who you simply are. Now add the final piece, the one that seals the loop shut. Confirmation bias, the second engine from the first chamber, turns the whole thing into a machine that cannot lose. Because once the world answers your prophecy, once the rejection comes, once the room confirms your smallness, your mind does not file it as one data point among many. It files it as the truth, underlined, and it uses it to filter harder tomorrow. The proof you helped create becomes the reason you create more of it. The output becomes the input. The echo becomes the source. Around and around, and every rotation is self-confirming, self-sealing, self-justifying. There is no gap in it where doubt could enter, because the doubt itself gets filtered out as noise. This is why arguing with a person's self-image never works. This is why you cannot love someone into believing they are lovable, or reassure someone out of their certainty that they will fail. The machine eats the counter-evidence and grows stronger on it. You have watched it happen in other people. You have not yet seen it clearly in yourself. That is what this chamber was for. The proof you created becomes the reason you create more of it. The prison feeds on its own walls. This is the whole of it. This is why forcing never worked, why wanting harder only tightened the knot, why the vision board mocked you from the wall. You were trying to change the picture while remaining the projector. You were trying to get a new answer from a room you kept filling with the old question. The sleeping ones live and die inside this loop and never once suspect it is a loop. They call it their personality. They call it just the way I am. They call it realistic. But you have followed me down through 4 chambers, and you have seen the machine from every side. And now you are standing at the door where the whole thing turns. Because if the self is the projector, then there was never anything to fix out in the world. There was only ever one thing to change. And it is the one thing they buried the deepest. Chapter 6. The Operant Power. They wrote it down. That is the thing the sleeping world does not know. This was never hidden in a vault. It was hidden in plain sight, printed in books you could have bought for a few coins, spoken from stages more than 100 years ago. In 1904, a retired judge named Thomas Troward stood in Edinburgh and taught that the world of form is shaped by the world of mind. In 1906, a writer named William Walker Atkinson set down the mechanics of thought as a kind of vibration, a signal that gathers its own likeness. In 1910, a dying man named Wallace Wattles wrote a small book about the exact science of becoming and told his readers that the thing they wanted was already theirs the moment they became the person who had it. They knew. And then, decades later, in laboratories and journals, the men in white coats found the same machine and gave it colder names: frequency illusion, self-verification, predictive processing, the self-fulfilling prophecy. They proved the old teachers right, and then buried the proof in language so clinical that no one who needed it would ever go looking. Hidden in plain sight, the most dangerous knowledge there is, filed under boredom. But the clearest voice came later and spoke plainest. A man named Neville Goddard, born on a small island, who spent his life saying one thing in 100 ways. Imagination creates reality. Not wishing, not begging some far-off universe for scraps. Imagination. The most inner act of assuming, so completely that it becomes your natural state. The feeling of the thing already done. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And he gave the whole descent its final word. The word this entire transmission has been circling. He told his listeners that the imagination does not run itself, that it waits, that it is a power lying dormant until a self picks it up and uses it. He called that self the operant power. You are the operant power. It does not operate itself. The operant power, not the technique, not the words, not the vision board or the frequency you tried to tune to. You, the one holding all of it, the self that generates the hallucination, that sets the thermostat, that names the identity, that transmits the prophecy. You were the machine the whole time. You were always the operant power. You simply operated it in your sleep, and it built you a sleeper's life. Here is where I have to be honest with you. More honest than the ones who sold you the fairy tale, because I respect you enough to give you the truth instead of the fantasy. I am not going to tell you that your thoughts reach out and rearrange matter by magic. I am not going to tell you the reticular gate fetches cars and lovers and money out of the ether. That is the lie. And the lie is why you failed. Because you tried to do the impossible thing and blamed yourself when it did not come. Here is what is true, and it is stranger and stronger than the lie. When you change the self, you change the filter, so you finally see the doors that were always there. You change the model, so your brain renders a world of possibility instead of a world of threat. You change what you transmit, so the people around you begin to answer a different person. You change the set point, so the good life stops feeling like a stolen coat and starts feeling like home, and you stop tearing it down with your own hands. You change the prophecy, so it begins slowly to speak in your favor. The world does not change because you begged it to. The world changes because the one perceiving it, transmitting to it, building it, and choosing inside it, became someone new. That is not magic. That is mechanics. And it is far more reliable than magic, because it works every single time, in exactly the measure that the change is real. You do not attract what you want. You cannot help but become what you are. Understand what these old teachers were actually saying, because the sleeping world flattened it into a slogan and sold it back to you as a wish. They were not telling you to want things at the sky until the sky gave in. They were telling you something far more radical and far more demanding. That the world you experience is the outpicturing of the self you are being. And that if you want a different world, you must consent to become a different self. First, before the evidence arrives, with nothing to go on but the decision itself. This is why it was called forbidden, and this is the real reason it was buried. Not because it was dangerous to the powerful, though the sellers of the fairy tale love to tell you that. It was buried because it is unbearable. It takes away your alibi. As long as the problem is out there, in the economy, in the one who left, in the parents who failed you, in the luck that never came. You get to remain innocent, and you get to remain the same. The old teaching walks in and takes the alibi away, and hands you something heavier than any circumstance. It hands you responsibility for the self that is meeting all of it. Most people cannot hold that weight, and so they set the teaching down and reach instead for the version that lets them stay who they are and simply ask louder. That version is comfortable. It is also the reason nothing changes. You cannot ask your way out of a prison you are building with your own identity. The asking is done by the prisoner, and the prisoner cannot free the prisoner. Neville said it in a way that should stop your breath. He said you must dare to assume you are already the one you want to be, and to persist in that assumption against all the evidence of your senses, until the assumption hardens into fact, and your senses have no choice but to catch up, against all the evidence of your senses. Sit with that. He knew the delayed echo would keep arriving. He knew the old world would keep showing up for a while. And he told you to stand inside the new self anyway, and let the old evidence break against you like waves against a rock that has already decided it is a rock. Persist in the assumption until your senses have no choice but to catch up. That is the operant power. Not a technique the old self performs. A new self assumed and held, until the whole machine, the filter, the model, the thermostat, the prophecy, turns and begins to serve it instead. This is the sixth turn of the lock, and it is the one that sets you free. But freedom like this is heavy, because it means no one is coming. No technique is going to save you. No teacher, no method, no perfect ritual performed by the same tired self. The old self cannot manifest a new life, no matter how hard it works, because the old self can only ever build more of the old life. That is not a flaw in the method. That is the method working. There is only one move left on the board. You have to stop trying to change what the projector shows. You have to change the projector. And in the last chamber, I am going to show you how. Not with cheerful nonsense. With the actual mechanics of becoming someone the old world can no longer contain. Chapter 7. Changing the signal. So how do you change the projector? How do you reset a thermostat that has been guarding the same temperature since before you can remember? I will not insult you with affirmations shouted at a mirror by a self that does not believe them. That is the hamster wheel. You have run on it long enough. Start with the strangest fact the science gave us, because it is the door. In 1967, a psychologist named Daryl Bem showed that we do not only act from who we are, we also decide who we are by watching what we do. The self reads its own behavior and draws conclusions. You look at your own actions the way you would look at a stranger's, and you infer, that must be the kind of person I am. This is the crack in the wall, because it means the loop runs both directions. Yes, your identity shapes your behavior, but your behavior, chosen deliberately, held long enough, reshapes your identity in return. You do not have to wait to feel like a new person before you can act like one. The acting is how the feeling is built. The old teachers knew this without the study. Neville told his listeners to live in the end, not to visit the wish, to live there, to move through the ordinary day already being the person for whom it is done, not straining toward it, occupying it the way you occupy your own name. Do not go to the new life to visit. Move in, unpack, stay. So here is the work. The real artifacts, stripped of the cheerful nonsense. 4 disciplines, none of them easy, all of them mechanics. You have to let it pass. Not with denial, with a deep, unbothered knowing that what is arriving now is an echo, not a verdict. The frequency illusion, which imprisoned you, becomes the very tool of your freedom the moment you turn it. Decide the new self is true, and the same machine that spent years gathering evidence for your smallness will begin, quietly, relentlessly, to gather evidence for who you are becoming. The filter will start to show you the doors. The model will start to render the openings. The prophecy will start, slowly, to speak in your favor. The machine never cared which self it served. It only ever served the one you gave it. The same machine that built your prison will build your freedom. It never cared which. It only obeys who you are. Let me stay with these a moment longer, because vague instructions are how the sleeping teachers keep you dependent. And I would rather you never need me again. When I say assume the new self to the point of the natural, I am describing a specific inner event, and you will know it when it comes. In the beginning, the new self feels like a lie you are telling. You catch yourself performing it, watching yourself perform it, certain that anyone could see through it, including you. Keep going. There is a threshold, and it does not announce itself, where the performance quietly stops being a performance, where you reach for the old fear out of habit and find it is not there, and you did not remove it, it simply stopped being yours. That is the assumption taking root, not a feeling of triumph, a feeling of the obvious. Oh, of course, this is just how it is now. When I say guard the inner conversation, I do not mean police every thought, which is impossible and would drive you mad. I mean this. Several times a day, catch the running commentary and simply notice which self is narrating. Is it the prisoner reciting the old sentence? Or is it the one you are becoming? When you catch the prisoner, you do not fight it. You do not argue. You gently return the narration to the new self, the way you would guide a wandering child back by the hand, without anger, 100 times if you have to. The war is not won by force. It is won by return, by coming back and coming back and coming back until the new voice is simply the one that is usually speaking. When I say revise the day, I mean something the old teachers guarded like treasure. At night, in the drift before sleep, when the mind is soft and the doors between the surface and the deep are standing open, you go back through the day and you find the moment that confirmed the prison. And you do not replay it as it happened. You replay it as the new self would have lived it. You feel it in the body as though it went that way. You are not lying to yourself about the facts. You are choosing which version your mind carries down into the deep to build tomorrow's model from. The sleeping ones let the day write itself into them, unedited, every insult and failure filed raw. You are going to edit the record before it sets. This one practice, done nightly, will remake you slowly and completely, and almost no one has the discipline to do it. Which is exactly why almost no one changes. And when I say refuse the old evidence, understand precisely what you are refusing, not reality. You still pay the bill. You still feel the grief. You do not paint over your life with denial. That is the toxic fairy tale, and it breaks people. What you refuse is the meaning. The old self says this bill means you are a failure. This silence means you are unlovable. This closed door means the world is exactly what it always was. You refuse the meaning, not the fact. You let the fact be a fact, and you deny it the power to be a verdict. The echo is allowed to arrive. It is not allowed to decide who you are. Let the fact be a fact. Refuse it the right to be a verdict. Now I have to speak softly to the ones carrying the heaviest things. If you are in real darkness, debt that keeps you awake, a body that is failing, a grief that has hollowed the house out. I will not stand here and tell you that you built this with your thoughts, or that your suffering is a failure of technique. That is a cruelty the fairy tale sellers traffic in, and it has no place here. Some of what falls on a life was never yours to author. But even here, in the worst of it, there is one thing that remains yours. Not the circumstance, the self that meets it. Who you are as you walk through the fire is the one territory that was never taken from you, and it is the territory from which everything else is slowly rebuilt. You do not have to feel powerful today. You only have to refuse one more time to sign the old verdict. That refusal, held quietly in the dark, is the beginning of the new signal. That is enough. For today, that is everything. This is the last turn of the lock. You came down here looking for a technique, and you are leaving with something the sleeping world will never have. You know the machine now. You have seen it filter, render, reset, and transmit. And you know the one lever that moves all of it. Not the wish, the wisher. Not the signal you send. The self that is the signal. Stop trying to change the broadcast. Become a different transmitter. 7 chambers, 1 key. And the door out was the same door you came in through. It always was. You just could not see it. Because it was not on the list of things you were looking for. Look again.